The twin sons of Velithra painted the sky in gold and violet as the human transport ship descended through the alien clouds. The planet shimmered like a world made of glass, filled with shining spires and flowing rivers of silver light. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered what waited beyond. Now they were part of the galaxy's politics, whether others liked it or not. Among the crew stood Captain Aaron Hale, a soldier who had seen too many wars and lost too many friends. His armor was scratched and dull, marked by battles that most could not even pronounce. He wasn't a man of pride or fame. He only believed in duty and the people he fought to protect. This time, his mission was not to fight but to lead. The Seren Dominion, one of the most advanced alien empires, had agreed to form a fragile alliance with Earth's forces to defend against the Kreth Hive, a monstrous swarm spreading across the stars. Humanity had offered their best commander, Aaron Hale, to work alongside the Seren. It was supposed to be a gesture of trust. But on Velithra, trust was harder to earn than victory. When Aaron stepped out of the ship, hundreds of Seren soldiers were waiting. They stood tall and graceful, their silver-blue armor shining under the suns. Their faces were sharp and elegant, almost statue-like. At the center of them stood Princess Lysera of the Seren Dominion, a symbol of pride and royal bloodline. Her golden crest shimmered like a crown. She looked at Aaron with eyes as cold as crystal. "So this is the human commander," she said softly, her voice like music that could cut. "The one your people call the Iron Wall of Earth." Aaron nodded respectfully. "I'm here to serve the Alliance, Your Highness." Lysera tilted her head slightly. "Strange. I thought humans served only themselves." A quiet tension filled the air. The human soldiers behind Aaron shifted uneasily. They were used to being doubted, but hearing it from a royal figure in front of everyone was different. Aaron didn't react. He had faced worse: plasma storms, collapsing ships, and arrogant generals. But this was something else. This was about honor. The royal court gathered inside the Grand Hall of Unity, a place built for this new partnership. The walls were made of glowing crystal, and banners of both worlds hung side by side. Humans and Serene officers stood around a massive round table, preparing for the first meeting of the Joint Command. Lysera took her seat on a high throne-like chair, while Aaron stood at the opposite side, calm and professional. He began to explain his strategy: how to defend the border colonies from the Kreth's next invasion, how to use human mobility with Seren technology for a perfect defense line. His tone was confident but respectful. He had studied the Seren culture before arriving. He knew they valued order, beauty, and grace, so he spoke carefully, with no arrogance. But Lysera didn't care for human strategy. "You speak of tactics and numbers," she interrupted, her tone sharp. "But do you understand the meaning of sacrifice? Or do humans simply throw bodies at their enemies until one side collapses?" The hall went silent. Aaron paused for a moment. "We fight because no one else will, Your Highness," he said quietly. "Sometimes that means we bleed first." Lysera's eyes narrowed. "So you admit you are brutes, creatures of war, not of wisdom." The words hit like a blade. Around the table, some Seren officers smiled faintly as if enjoying the insult. Human officers clenched their fists but said nothing. Aaron stood there in silence. His calm expression didn't change, but inside something heavy settled in his chest. He had hoped this alliance would be about respect and survival, not pride and mockery. Lysera leaned back in her chair, clearly satisfied. "The Seren Dominion fights for legacy. We fight with honor. You humans, however," she gestured at his armor, "hide behind machines. You wear metal to make yourselves feel powerful." Aaron slowly removed his helmet and placed it on the table. Then, to everyone's surprise, he unlatched the magnetic seals of his chest plate and set that down too. The metallic clank echoed across the hall. He stood tall, dressed only in his undersuit, plain, unadorned human. "You're right," Aaron said quietly. "This armor doesn't make me powerful. It only reminds me of those who wore it before me and never came back." The hall went utterly still. Even the hum of the glowing walls seemed to fade. Lysera's expression froze. She hadn't expected that answer. Aaron placed his rank insignia beside the armor. "If my presence offends the Alliance, then I'll step down. My men will follow your command instead." Then he turned around and walked toward the exit. Each step he took echoed louder than words. No anger, no pride, just calm silence. The Seren guards moved aside instinctively as he passed. Even they could feel the strange weight in the air. the kind that made warriors lower their heads without knowing why. Lysera stared at the empty doorway long after he was gone. Something inside her chest tightened. She had wanted to show strength, to remind the humans that Seren nobility ruled the stars. But now she wasn't sure what she had shown. The silence felt heavier than victory. One of her generals leaned closer and whispered, "Princess, he humiliated himself." "Let him leave," Lysera didn't answer. She looked at the armor lying on the table, plain, scarred, and human. There were names engraved on the inside of the metal. She couldn't read the language, but she understood what they were. Fallen soldiers. Later that night, as the twin moons of Velithra rose over the shining city, Lysera found herself staring out from her balcony. She could see the human camp far below, their lights glowing faintly like stars. For the first time, she wondered about the human who walked away in silence. Was that weakness, or was that strength? In her world, pride was everything. Words were weapons sharper than blades. But humans, these strange, resilient beings, seemed to fight with something else. Not for pride, not for glory, but for something deeper. Aaron Hale, the man she called a brute, had answered her insult not with anger, but with dignity. And that somehow unsettled her more than any argument could. The next day, orders came from the Emperor himself. The Kreth Hive had been sighted near the outer rings, close to Seren colonies. A joint response team would be deployed at once. Lysera was chosen to lead the Seren forces. But to her surprise, the Emperor added another name to the command order, Captain Aaron Hale, representing Earth. Her heart skipped a beat. She had wounded the man's honor, yet fate had placed them side by side again. As dawn broke across Velithra's crystal horizon, Lysera stood by her window watching human transports rise into the sky. Somewhere inside one of those ships, the silent soldier was preparing for another mission. She didn't know what to say when they met again. But one thing was certain. The man who walked away had left a mark that even a princess could not ignore. The twin suns had not yet risen when Captain Aaron Hale woke from another short night. His bunk inside the human barracks was small, plain, and cold, just the way he preferred it. He had spent years sleeping on warships and battlefronts. Comfort was something he never expected anymore. He sat up, ran a hand through his short hair, and glanced at the small photograph taped above his bunk. It showed a group of human soldiers smiling in dusty uniforms. Most of them were gone now. That was the price of war. He stood, put on his undersuit, and quietly walked to the briefing room. The air outside was cool and still. The alien world of Velithra was beautiful but strange. Trees made of crystal, rivers that glowed at night, and air that shimmered faintly with light. Humans were still learning to breathe in its beauty without feeling small. The Alliance base was a strange mix of human metal and serene glass, two very different species trying to work as one. But the tension between them was clear, like a crack in a mirror. Ever since the meeting in the Royal Hall, rumors had spread through both camps. Some said the princess had shamed the human commander. Others said the human had shamed her by walking away without a word. No one really knew what had happened in that moment, but everyone felt it. When Aaron entered the briefing room, a few Seren officers stopped talking. They glanced at him, whispering quietly in their musical language. The humans in the room gave him small nods of respect. They had seen what he did. To them, his silence had spoken louder than any defense could. Aaron ignored the whispers and walked straight to the planning table. He began reviewing the latest reports. The Kreth Hive had been sighted again, this time near Outpost Darren, a mining colony along the edge of the Seren Dominion. If that colony fell, the swarm would have a direct path toward the inner planets. He needed to prepare his men. Whether the Seren trusted him or not, there was no time for pride. On the other side of the base, Princess Lysera sat alone in her private chamber. The golden light from her window danced across the polished floor. But her heart felt heavy. She replayed yesterday's moment again and again in her mind, the human soldier removing his armor, leaving his insignia, and walking away in silence. There was no anger in his eyes, no insult in his tone, only calm disappointment. Somehow, that hurt more than any shouted argument. Her father, Emperor Talon, had not been gentle with his words. "You insulted a man who showed restraint and honor," he told her sternly. "Is this how a leader of the Seren speaks to an ally?" Lysera had lowered her head. I meant only to show the strength of our people. Strength? The Emperor's voice had softened. Strength is knowing when not to speak. Even you could learn from that human. The words echoed in her mind like a quiet storm. She had grown up believing that the Seren were the wisest of all species, born to lead, born to rule. But that human had challenged her without saying a single word. And now she could not stop thinking about it. A soft chime broke her thoughts. It was a message, an order from her father. She was to lead the serene half of the Joint Task Force to Outpost Darren. And, by Imperial command, Captain Aaron Hale was to share leadership of the mission. Her chest tightened. Of all the soldiers, it had to be him. Later that day, the two sides met in the Central Command Hall. Humans in dark combat gear stood beside Seren warriors in bright silver armor. At the center of the room stood the two commanders, Aaron Hale and Princess Lysera. The air between them felt like a wire pulled too tight. Aaron stood straight, expression calm, while Lysera avoided his eyes for a moment. Then she took a quiet breath and spoke first. "Captain Hale," she said softly, "we have been ordered to lead this mission together. I trust you will provide insight into your human strategies." Her tone was polite, though still touched with pride. Aaron nodded. "Of course, Your Highness. My men are ready." He didn't mention the insult. He didn't show anger. His words were steady and professional, as if the past had already been forgotten. But the silence that followed made Lysera's heart beat faster. They reviewed battle plans together. Aaron spoke calmly, explaining how the Kreth moved in waves, how they left traps, and how human scanners could detect heat signatures through their organic fog. Lysera listened carefully, trying to understand this strange human logic. What surprised her was his precision. He didn't shout or demand attention. Every suggestion he made came with reason and experience. He was not reckless, not primitive. He was a soldier who had learned from loss. At one point, a Seren general challenged him. "Human methods rely on risk," the general said sharply. "Our people do not gamble with life." Aaron looked at him quietly. "Neither do we," he said. "But we don't freeze while others die." The room fell silent again. Even Lysera could not find a response. After the meeting ended, Aaron left to prepare his unit. Lysera remained behind, staring at the holographic map glowing above the table. The human's words replayed in her mind. "We don't freeze while others die." It wasn't arrogance. It was truth. That evening, the Joint Task Force departed for Outpost Darren. The human transport ships were rough and simple, built for function, not beauty. The Seren ships, in contrast, glided through the air like shining birds of light. The two fleets traveled side by side, a strange symbol of unity forged by necessity. Inside one of the command ships, Lysera stood by the viewing window, watching the stars stretch across the dark void. Her reflection in the glass looked uncertain, almost human. She turned when she heard footsteps behind her. Aaron had entered the room, still wearing the same plain armor, no rank badge this time. He saluted slightly out of habit. "Your Highness," he said. "You may speak freely here," she replied quietly. "There are no guards, no court." Aaron simply nodded. For a long moment they both stared out at the stars. Finally, Lysera spoke again. "Captain, why did you not defend yourself? In the hall, you could have argued. You could have demanded respect. But you didn't." Aaron thought for a moment. "Arguing doesn't change minds, Princess," he said softly. "Sometimes silence does more." Lysera's gaze softened. "You make silence sound powerful." "It can be," Aaron said, "but only if you stand by it." He turned and began to leave, but before he reached the door, she said quietly, "I was wrong." He paused but didn't look back. "Maybe," he said, "but it's not me you have to prove that to. It's your people." Then he walked out just as he had before, quietly, without anger, leaving her with questions that words couldn't answer. Hours later, alarms blared across the ship. The Kreth swarm had been detected ahead, thousands of bioships emerging from the void, moving toward Outpost Darren. Their living vessels pulsed like dark hearts in space, spreading mist and static across the scanners. Aaron and Lysera rushed to the command bridge. "They're early," Aaron said sharply. "They must have tracked our movement." Lysera looked at the display. "There are too many." Aaron turned to her. "Then we hold as long as we can. We protect the colony. That's the mission." The bridge trembled as the first Kreth attack wave hit the outer defense line. The war had found them faster than expected. As explosions flashed in the distance, Lysera looked at the human beside her. Even under pressure, he was calm, steady, unshaken, and in that moment she understood something her father had tried to teach her. True strength is not loud. It does not need to boast. It stands quietly, even in the face of storms. And the human soldier beside her was proof of it. The skies above Outpost Darren were dark with the shadow of the Kreth swarm. Thousands of alien ships, each pulsating with a living energy, filled the void like a storm of eyes. The humans and Seren forces had no time to think, only to act. Captain Aaron Hale stood on the command deck of the human transport Endurance, his fingers gripping the railing as his eyes scanned the approaching swarm. His face was calm, almost unnerving in its steadiness. Around him, human soldiers prepared weapons, checked armor, and calibrated systems. The Seren warriors moved with precision, but there was tension in their steps. They had never faced an enemy like the Kreth, not even in their most advanced training simulations. Princess Lysera stood beside him on the deck, her golden armor gleaming in the ship's internal lights. She had never felt fear like this, not in battle simulations, not even when commanding the finest Seren warriors. But now, with millions of lives at stake, she realized that her pride alone would not be enough. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice steady though her chest still pounded. "Our sensors show multiple Kreth wings forming ahead. They will strike all at once." Aaron did not look away from the approaching enemy. "Then we fight in layers. Human infantry take the outer perimeter. Seren forces cover the inner lines. I will coordinate from the field." His voice was calm, but each word carried command. "Keep the civilians moving. Protect the colony at all costs." Lysera hesitated. She wanted to argue, to assert her authority, to show that the Seren had always led in battle. But something about Aaron's quiet confidence stopped her. She nodded, giving the order to her soldiers. The transports dropped from orbit and landed near the colony's perimeter. Human soldiers poured out, running into battle positions, while Seren warriors moved like silver shadows, gliding gracefully across the terrain. Aaron followed them, walking without hurry, his presence commanding without words. He carried no insignia now, no helmet, no external signs of rank. He wore only the suit that allowed freedom of movement, his weapons ready at his side. The first wave of Kreth ships descended, massive, dark, and almost alive. They unleashed energy pulses that tore through shields and scorched the terrain. Human artillery responded. Seren energy beams cut through Kreth hulls, and for a moment, chaos ruled the battlefield. A group of Kreth drones broke through the outer defenses, moving toward the civilian shelters. Aaron sprinted ahead without hesitation. His movements were precise, each step calculated, each shot perfect. He reached the nearest shelter and found civilians frozen in fear. "Follow me," he shouted. "Keep low and move fast." They ran behind him, trusting his calm in a way they could not trust the chaos around them. A single Kreth drone lunged toward them, its energy claws reaching out. Aaron fired, disabling it instantly with a precise shot. The civilians looked at him in awe. This was not a hero, not a legend. They could see the man's skill, his humanity, his courage. Meanwhile, Lysera led her forces against another Kreth wing. She had trained for years, but in this moment, she saw the human soldiers operating with unity she had never expected. They moved as one, not for glory, not for pride, but because every life mattered. She felt a pang of something unfamiliar, respect. And perhaps something more. As the battle raged, a massive Kreth warship descended directly toward the colony's center. Its energy pulse hit the ground, throwing debris into the air. The humans and Seren alike were thrown back. Aaron assessed the situation quickly. "We can't stop it from landing directly, but we can divert its attack," he shouted to Lysera. "Cover me!" Without waiting, he charged forward. His body moved faster than it seemed possible. He fired explosive rounds into the ship's propulsion system, causing it to tilt. Kreth drones swarmed him, but he moved like water, dodging and striking with efficiency. Lysera watched from a distance, her heart racing. He was not reckless. He was calculated, fearless, and unafraid of death. He fought for purpose, not for pride. Aaron's strategy worked. The Kreth warship crashed into the outskirts of the colony instead of the center. Explosions rocked the land, but the civilians in the heart of the colony remained safe. For a moment, the battle seemed to pause, as if the swarm was reassessing this unexpected resistance. Aaron turned to see Lysera struggling against a group of Kreth warriors. One of them lunged at her with sharp, energy-tipped claws. Without hesitation, Aaron sprinted forward and intercepted the strike. The weapon struck the ground instead of her, sending sparks flying. "You okay?" he shouted. Lysera nodded, breathless. Her pride wanted to speak, to say she did not need saving, but she could not. "Not now. Thanks," she whispered, almost inaudible over the battle. Aaron didn't answer. He simply gestured for her to retreat while he held the line. The humans and Seren regrouped under his direction. He coordinated counterattacks, repositioned artillery, and sent reinforcements exactly where needed. Each decision was measured, precise, and life-saving. By midday, the Kreth swarm began to falter. They had not expected a human to lead with such clarity, nor had they counted on the unity of two species fighting as one. Slowly, the alien tide began to retreat. The battlefield was scarred. Smoke rose in thin columns, and the sound of distant explosions echoed through the mountains. Yet the humans and Seren had survived, and the colony stood. Amid the chaos, Lysera found a moment to approach Aaron. He was checking his squad, ensuring that the wounded received attention. His armor lay in a small pile nearby, untouched. You saved the colony," she said quietly, almost unsure of herself. Aaron didn't look up. "We saved it together," he said simply. "Humans alone could not have done it. Saren alone could not have done it. But together we can." Lysera studied him. He did not seek glory. He did not ask for praise. He had walked away once in silence, but now he had returned not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. For the first time, she realized something important. Pride could blind a leader. Humility could guide one. And courage was not measured by words, but by actions. The survivors of the battle began gathering the wounded and securing the perimeter. Aaron moved among them, treating injuries, offering words of calm, and giving orders where needed. His presence was like a rock in the storm. Lysera could not stop watching. The human who had insulted her pride without saying a single word had proven himself stronger than any boasting warrior she had ever known. By nightfall, the Kreth had retreated. Smoke and fire lit the horizon, but the colony and its people were alive. The Saren generals were silent, some of them nodding in quiet respect toward the human captain. Aaron finally approached Lysera, who had remained on the hill overlooking the battlefield. She was quiet, watching the stars emerge above the war-torn landscape. "You fought well," she said, her voice low. Aaron simply nodded. "So did you. And your people. That is all that matters." She wanted to ask more, to apologize, to understand him, but the words seemed too small for the weight of the day. Instead, she nodded, a silent acknowledgement of respect. And for the first time, she saw him not as a human soldier, not as a brute, but as a man of honor. The two stood in silence, watching the stars. The smoke and fire of battle still lingered, but the knowledge that they had survived together was stronger than any flame. In that quiet, Lysera began to understand a truth she had never accepted before. Humans were not defined by arrogance or technology. They were defined by their courage, their choices, and their willingness to stand when others could not. And Captain Aaron Hale, the man who had walked away in silence, had proven that in ways she could not forget. The smoke had barely cleared from the Battle of Black Ridge, but the threat of the Kreth hive still loomed large. Outpost Aaron stood battered but alive. The humans were exhausted, their weapons and armor worn from continuous fighting. The Seren forces were equally strained, their elegant energy shields flickering and humming from the strain of the recent conflict. Princess Lysera walked among the injured soldiers, her step steady despite the exhaustion that tugged at her muscles. The memory of Captain Aaron Hale moving through the battlefield, calm and precise, refused to leave her mind. She approached a group of human medics tending to wounded Seren warriors. For hours, Aaron had moved among the soldiers, administering aid, giving orders, and keeping morale high. Not once had he stopped to claim credit. Lysera watched him from a distance as he spoke quietly to a young human soldier who had stumbled while carrying supplies. Aaron's hand rested gently on the soldier's shoulder, his voice calm but firm. "Keep moving, one step at a time. That's how we get through." It was a simple moment, but to Lysera it spoke volumes. Humans did not wear their honor on banners or boast of their deeds. They acted silently when it mattered most. The princess walked toward him, but he did not notice her until she spoke. "You saved countless lives today," Lysera said, her voice low. Aaron looked up, his expression calm. "We saved them together," he replied. "Your people fought bravely. So did my soldiers." Lysera felt a surge of frustration. Pride had always been her compass, but now she realized that it had led her to misjudge him. The human who had insulted her in the royal hall had shown more courage in one day than many warriors showed in a lifetime. She wanted to ask why he had walked away that first day, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she studied him as he moved on to organize reinforcements. Every gesture he made was deliberate, calm, and precise. He did not demand respect. He earned it silently. Later, in the command center, the joint task force gathered to assess the damage and plan their next move. The Kreth were regrouping, and intelligence suggested a much larger attack was imminent, aimed directly at the Seren capital. Emperor Talon entered the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. He looked at Lysera, then at Aaron, and finally addressed both. "The Kreth will not rest," he said. "They will strike with everything they have. We must be ready. Princess Lysera, Captain Hale, your leadership will be tested again." Lysera swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, to insist that she could handle it alone. But the look in her father's eyes reminded her of the lessons she had yet to learn. True leadership was not about pride, it was about responsibility. Aaron stepped forward. "We will need to coordinate both human and Seren forces," he said quietly. "Our strength lies in unity. Separate, we will fall. Together, we have a chance." Lysera nodded, surprised at how natural it felt to follow his guidance. His calm voice did not order her. It invited cooperation, and for the first time she saw humans not as inferior or crude, but as partners capable of strategic brilliance. Over the next few days, Aaron worked tirelessly alongside Lysera. He trained joint squads, combining human adaptability with Seren technology. He demonstrated tactics that the Seren had never considered. Small teams moving like shadows, using terrain and stealth instead of relying solely on shields and energy weapons. At first, some Seren officers resisted. They whispered among themselves that humans were reckless, unworthy of leadership. But Aaron ignored the gossip. His actions on the battlefield had already spoken louder than words ever could. One evening, after a long day of planning and training, Lysera found herself alone with Aaron on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky a deep purple, streaked with silver clouds. "You never seem to tire," she said quietly, watching him review maps with a soft glow from the control panels behind him. Aaron smiled faintly. "Fatigue doesn't matter when others rely on you. We all find energy for what matters most." Lysera hesitated, then spoke, almost in a whisper. "Why did you walk away the first day?" "In the royal hall, after I insulted you." Aaron paused, his gaze shifting to the distant horizon. "I could have argued," he said. "I could have shouted or tried to prove myself. But words mean little. Actions matter. If I let pride guide me, I would lose sight of the mission. I walked away so I could focus on what truly matters, protecting lives, not my ego." Lysera felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never considered that strength could be quiet, that courage could be patient. The human she had thought weak had taught her a lesson she would never forget. Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the city. Sensors detected the Kreth approaching once more, this time with an overwhelming fleet. The final battle was coming. Aaron turned toward the alert. "This is it," he said calmly. "We hold them off long enough for civilians to evacuate. That is our mission. After that, we fight for the capital itself." Lysera nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. For the first time, she did not feel alone. With Aaron at her side, the humans and Seren could stand a chance against an enemy that had consumed entire worlds. The following day, the combined forces moved to the Gate of Lathor, the final defensive wall before the Seren capital. The human and Seren soldiers marched side by side, united by necessity and growing respect. Aaron's strategies were precise. He coordinated movements, assigning squads to guard evacuation routes, others to set traps, and a select few to act as decoys. Every decision was calculated, designed to maximize survival while minimizing risk. Lysera watched him, her respect deepening. His calm under pressure inspired the troops. Even the Seren soldiers who had doubted humans began to follow his orders without question. As the Kreth approached, their massive fleet darkening the sky, Aaron stepped forward to rally the troops. His voice carried across the battlefield, calm, steady, and unwavering. "Hold the line," he shouted. "Not for glory, not for pride, but for those who cannot fight for themselves. Stand together, and we will endure." The troops cheered, their morale strengthened by his words. Lysera felt a lump in her throat. She had never seen such confidence, such quiet leadership. The Kreth descended and the battle began. Aaron moved like a shadow through the chaos, rescuing soldiers trapped under debris, disabling drones and giving orders that saved lives. Lysera fought beside him, her skill and courage complementing his strategy. For the first time, she understood that leadership was not about ego or pride. It was about responsibility, sacrifice, and action, and the human soldier who had walked away in silence had taught her that lesson better than anyone could. As night fell over the battlefield, Aaron and Lysera stood together on a small ridge, overlooking the scattered remains of the enemy forces. The humans in Seren were exhausted but alive. The Kreth had been delayed, if not defeated. Lysera turned to Aaron. "I see now. Strength is not what I thought. You showed me what true courage is." Aaron looked at her, his expression calm but thoughtful. "It's not about me. It's about all of us. We survive when we put others before ourselves." For the first time, Lysera bowed slightly, not as a princess to a soldier, but as a leader recognizing the worth of another. The final battle for the capital was coming, and together, humans and Seren would face it as one. The man who had insulted her pride and walked away in silence had become her greatest ally, and perhaps the only one who could show her what it truly meant to lead. The morning sky over the Seren capital was pale and cold, the twin suns hidden behind streaks of ash from distant battles. The city's spires shone faintly through the haze, but the peace was fragile. Every sensor, every scout had reported the same terrifying truth. The Kreth hive was advancing in full force, larger than any force they had encountered before. Captain Aaron Hale stood on the highest balcony of the Gate of Lather, overlooking the open plains where the Kreth swarm would soon descend. He wore his undersuit, simple and unadorned, the armor he had laid down long ago now replaced only by the confidence in his own experience and the trust of those he commanded. Beside him, Princess Lysera stood tall, her golden armor reflecting the faint light. She had never felt fear like this, yet she did not show it. Today she was not just a princess. She was a leader, responsible for every human and Seren life in the city. And today the man who had insulted her pride, the human who had walked away in silence, would show her the meaning of courage. "They're coming," Aaron said calmly, pointing to the horizon. The Kreth swarm appeared as a dark shadow, moving like a tide across the plains. Hundreds of ships pulsating with living energy swept toward the city, their advance relentless. Lysera swallowed hard. "Can we hold them?" she asked quietly. Aaron's eyes did not leave the horizon. "We have to. We must buy time for the evacuation. If we fail, thousands of innocent lives are lost. Every decision counts." He turned to the assembled troops. Humans and Seren stood side by side, exhausted from previous battles, but resolute. "Hold the line. Protect the civilians. Fight not for glory, but for life itself." His voice carried like steel through the field, steady and inspiring. The soldiers responded with a unified cheer, their fear transformed into determination. The first wave of Kreth hit with a deafening roar. Energy beams tore through shields and explosions threw debris into the air. The ground shook as the swarm landed, their clawed living ships tearing at the defenses. Aaron moved quickly, running through the chaos to direct the troops. He guided the humans and Seren in a seamless combination of tactics, humans using mobility and adaptive strategies, Seren relying on their advanced technology and precision strikes. Princess Lysera fought at his side, her golden armor gleaming. Together they became a single force, human intuition complementing Seren's skill. At one point, a massive Kreth drone lunged at the evacuation corridor, aiming to trap civilians. Aaron sprinted ahead, intercepting the drone with calculated precision. His shots disabled its energy core, and he threw himself into the path of falling debris, shielding fleeing humans and Seren soldiers alike. Lysera watched in awe. He moved not like a soldier seeking honor, but like a man who understood that every life mattered more than his own. Hours passed in a blur of chaos. Explosions shook the ground, screams of warning echoed, and the sky above glowed with the energy of 1,000 weapons. Aaron remained calm, a steady presence amid the storm. Then came the Kreth flagship, a massive living ship that blocked the sun and shook the city with its pulsating energy. It was larger than anything they had faced before, and it began firing directly at the city walls. Aaron assessed the situation instantly. "We can't stop it from reaching the city without significant casualties. But we can slow it," he shouted to Lysera. "Cover me while I lead the decoy team." Lysera's heart clenched. "You'll be alone." "I won't let you." Aaron smiled faintly. Sometimes walking away once is not enough. The world needs action now, not pride. He sprinted toward a narrow canyon that led away from the main gates, signaling a small squad of elite soldiers to follow. They moved like shadows through the canyon, drawing the attention of the Kreth flagship and smaller drones. The decoy worked. The massive Kreth vessel diverted, giving the city precious time. But the humans in the canyon were outnumbered, surrounded, and exposed. Aaron fought with relentless precision. Every movement, every shot, every command was calculated. He disabled energy cannons, destroyed Kreth drones, and saved soldiers multiple times, always staying one step ahead. Lysera watched through her ship's scanners, her hands gripping the controls. She wanted to intervene, to help, but she understood his strategy. He was not reckless. He was holding the line until the city could be evacuated. The battle raged for hours. Aaron and his small team became a wall of resistance, buying time for thousands of civilians. Explosions rocked the canyon, and the air was thick with smoke and energy. Yet he remained unshaken. Finally, the Kreth began to retreat, but the cost was immense. The canyon was littered with debris, destroyed drones, and fallen soldiers. Among them, Aaron's armor lay broken, torn by impacts, his weapons spent. Princess Lysera rushed forward with her elite squad, hoping to find him alive. She arrived at the canyon's edge, her heart pounding. Smoke and dust cleared to reveal the battlefield. The Kreth had withdrawn, but Aaron was gone. Her stomach tightened. Panic surged. She ran forward, searching desperately, calling his name. Her soldiers followed, lifting debris, checking the injured, but there was no sign of him. For a moment, silence fell over her. The man who had walked away in the royal hall, the man who had shown her what true courage was now gone. Hours later, when the evacuation was complete and the city was safe, Lysera returned to the site with a small team. They found the broken armor of Captain Aaron Hale, carefully laid aside, his weapons nearby. No body could be recovered. Lysera knelt beside the armor, her golden eyes filled with tears. She traced a finger along the scratches, the marks of countless battles. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak the words she had held back for days. "You taught me more than I ever expected," she whispered. "You showed me that strength is not pride and courage is not loud. You showed me humanity." The soldiers standing behind her were silent. Even the Seren warriors, proud and disciplined, bowed their heads in respect. Months later, the story of the human captain spread throughout both human and Seren worlds. The Battle of Black Ridge and the Canyon Decoy became legendary, not for the destruction of the Kreth, but for the courage of one human who walked away in silence and returned to save countless lives. In the Seren capital, Lysera commissioned a monument. It was not a statue of a king, nor of herself, nor of any great general. It was a simple depiction of a human soldier, standing calmly with armor at his feet. The inscription read, "Strength is not in pride. It is in the courage to walk away and to return when the world needs you." Every year, serene and human forces gathered at the monument, honoring the silent courage of the man who had changed their worlds. Lysera often stood there alone, her golden armor gleaming in the sunlight. She thought of Aaron Hale, the human who had insulted her pride and walked away. She realized that his silence had been more powerful than any word, his actions more enduring than any boast. In her heart, she knew that the legacy of that human soldier would never fade. His courage, humility, and dedication to life over pride had left a mark on both species that no war could erase. And somewhere, beyond the stars, the man who walked away in silence had become a symbol, not of victory or glory, but of what it truly meant to be human. The galaxy had witnessed the quiet strength of humanity, and it would never be forgotten.